Hello again, my friends. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about religion. So welcome back to the channel. Thanks for watching. And if you're a religious person who may find offense in a disagreement with your particular belief system, then you might want to turn the video off, because I'm not here to offend, but I've noticed that whenever I make a video talking about the aspects of religion I disagree with, there's always going to be somebody who's going to tell me I'll burn in hell, or that will be offended by it somehow, no matter how I try to, approach the situation. So I'd like to start off by saying, we talk about the magic underwear. We all know that the Mormons wear magic underwear, right? What? You don't? You never heard of that? Okay, well, Mormons are required to wear what you might call kind of a onesie type underwear outfit for men and women. It has a top and a bottom. And you're supposed to wear this underneath your clothes at all times, day and night, for your entire life. This actually only became an issue recently with Mitt Romney, where people were asking him about his why he has these things on, and you're not supposed to talk about it. The church, it's not something you're supposed to show. And in fact, the church themselves, the Mormon church, has said, look, we find it very offensive when people call it magic underwears, and it's offensive to them. Which, the reason I said magic underwear was not specifically to offend, but to say, if you're offended by that, maybe it's time to kind of check your snowflake level, if you will. In other words, anything that's strong enough to stand up to criticism is usually what remains. And in society, through history, somebody has made a claim, others have either ridiculed it or supported it, and if it worked for the people, then we stuck with it. And continuously, this has been shown to be the truth. Now, on the side, there are always people taking advantage. I'd like to start by saying religion itself isn't a problem. It's those who take advantage of religion and use it for their own purposes. And it's like every church wants your money. So, that right there says, well, if you don't give to God, then you don't care about your religion. And it all comes down to guilt. And that's what's bothersome to me. We are born into a world that is so confusing already that if you have to wear a onesie to remind yourself of God, and I would assume at the time there was a little chastity involved in that, but I'd also like to say that when Joseph Smith came up with this clothing, it has specific shapes, symbols that represent different aspects of divinity and life. And he said that God will only allow one specific type, and you cannot change the underwear. But the Latter-day Saints Church decided recently, or a while back, that yeah, you can change it. So they changed, and now there are a variety of different garments you can get. So my thought is this: if Joseph Smith was the speaker for the religion, and he said that's the only way it can be, then why does the church have a chance to just decide that they want to see things differently? And I don't see that as a bad thing. I see it as a good thing, and that's what I'm getting at. If anything, the Mormon church has actually changed with the times because they have to. And of course we know that the clergy and the leaders within the church don't really believe what they're preaching. I'm sure a majority of them are well aware that it's bogus, but once enough people believe in something, it's easy to bounce ideas off each other. And I don't mean to pick Mormonism as the biggest problem. In fact, I actually respect Mormons. They come to my house, regularly each year, and I have very enjoyable conversations with them. In fact, the last time they came, I recorded the conversation so I could listen back and try to better handle myself around Mormons, because I want to... At first I thought, well, these poor kids, they're deluded. But then I thought, hey, if it makes them happy, so be it. I don't think that we should be working towards dismantling religion, like Penn Jillette or George Carlin, their extreme kind of comedic views about things. George Carlin talked about religion. He nailed it, but he was so brutal that most Christians wouldn't want to hear it, and they wouldn't listen to the aspects he had to say because it was so vulgar, if you will. So anyhow, my idea is more to just kind of get to the bottom of things and why we need a specific belief system rather than just to say any God's fine. Because even within the Christian community, when a person says I'm a Christian, oh, I'm a Christian too, they very rarely say, well, I'm from this denomination, because they know what's going to happen. Oh, I'm Episcopalian. Oh, I'm Presbyterian. You know, everybody has their own beliefs and they're slightly different. And my thought is that within the Christian community, they can't even agree on a basic premise of what the Bible means. That just opens it up to say, hey, that's okay. That's where each area has its own circumstances, and therefore the conditions that apply to that area are applied to the religion. I have my own God, and I don't understand why a person can't just say, I believe that there's a higher power that we can't understand, and that's good enough for me. It's that many Christians have accused me and others of saying, well, if you don't believe in the Christian God, and you don't believe in Jesus, then you're wrong, and your God's wrong, and everything you believe is wrong, and you're going to hell. And in my eyes, that's a person's choice to believe that, but it's not very productive in a conversation to tell other people or to believe other people are going to hell. So while many Christians will say, well, I'm tolerant and I respect all other people and their beliefs, I always ask them, but do you believe I'm going to hell? Because that's an important question to me. You know, it's not relevant. You know, their opinions don't have relevance on my life, but I hope it opens their minds to realize that they have bias towards a person that they think is going to hell, obviously, but it may be subconscious bias. You know, a lot of people don't like religion because beliefs can be dangerous, and that's absolutely true. They can be, but they're like tools. You can use them to better your life, or you can use them to destroy, and that's up to the individual too. It's not religion that's the problem, it's dogma and extremism, and everything's taken to that. It's just like politics aren't the problem, it's extremism. It's that pharmaceuticals aren't the problem, it's the extremism and the lies and the bullshit and the covering up of, you know, what's going on. It's always the extreme angles of things that are the problem. The rest of us are pretty moderate. A majority of people are pretty rational, well thought out people. But what I don't understand is how a person who's, say, a scientist, who's a Christian, won't apply the scientific, you know, method to their own beliefs. And that shows something about the psychology of people. Why are we not willing to look at our own thoughts and our own beliefs through a scientific lens if we call ourselves scientists? That just amazes me. There's no excuse for not using your mind. I mean, we're gifted with thought, and we should utilize it to the best we can. But what it shows is that people want to hang on to their beliefs so badly that they're willing to discount any evidence against it, and so be it. But the problem, like I said, isn't what other people believe. It's that they are getting together in groups and trying to tell others that they should believe that. And entire, you know, people are coming up in this world. There's plenty of teenagers out there right now who are wondering, God, is God real? You know, or is God not real? And there's always somebody to tell them. And unfortunately, a person who's an atheist isn't going to be like, yeah, join us atheists. They're going to be like, oh, I don't believe in God. But a person who's a Christian will bring you to their church. They want you to become a member, and you might fall into that. And it might work for you for a while. But the problem comes not with the belief itself, but when people start saying, well, I disagree with your belief, and then a person takes it personally. I think all of our beliefs and ideas should be able to stand up to scrutiny. If somebody calls me out on something I said that's BS, there's not much I can do about it. I can't get mad at them for it. I just have to say, if I don't have the evidence, I can just go by the evidence I have. And often that evidence is very small. But when it's just faith-based, based on what other people have told us, that makes it even more difficult. There are a lot of what I call Christian lights who just go to church on Christmas, and a lot of Christians say that they're like that, you know, and they feel guilty about it. And it's like, there's enough guilt already in life about just being human, you know. Then the church puts more guilt on you just for being alive, that you're a sinner, and then you get more guilt for not giving to the collection plate, and then more guilt because you only go to church once a year. And I guess I don't know, a lot of people hide behind their beliefs to justify their biases. And that's one of the main points I wanted to make here. There are a lot of folks who say, well, I'm not going to tolerate homosexuality or other religions or other cultures because my Bible says so. But they ignore any part of the Bible that says to, you know, stone someone to death if they work on the Sabbath, which is another one. People can't even agree if that's Saturday or Sunday. Or that slaves should obey their masters. It's selective choosing of what they want to take literally. But nobody likes being, you know, talked down to. And when a lot of religious folks talk down condescending, these Jimmy Swaggart types, these these big time, this Popov, you might remember Peter Popov from the 80s, I think. A lot of these guys who were big time, preachers, evangelists, how many of them have been found to be frauds and lying to the people? And what about all the different bishops and pastors who have been found to abuse children? What I'm saying is not that the religion causes that, but that people are people. And even a person who claims that they're a God-fearing person, a person who claims to be, the most connected to God, not only can abuse other people, children, but then the other pastors, the other bishops, protect them, send them to another church. To me, the Catholic Church has revealed itself for what it is. Like the Vatican is standing there while there's people, starving, and there's plenty of reason to say they could sell their statues off and help people. I won't get into that. What inspired me, I guess, was that there was a burn, that building burned down the other day, the Notre Dame, the cathedral. And I remember my mom sent me a text saying how sad it was, and I hadn't even heard about it yet. And I was like, oh, well, it's just a church. And her thought was that it was history. And my instant thought, I couldn't help it, was that, a history of persecution, abuse, torture, crucifixion, the Crusades, a variety of other different things that have happened through history, and I just don't see anything that religion has brought positively to the world that's helped all of us. And a lot of people say, well, the Bible is the only book we need, and I just haven't seen it. I read the Bible. I read entire books from it. I read paragraphs, pages. I read some of it when I was like 15 years old. I'm curious. I want to know. But if I have a hard time comprehending some of it, I can't imagine how a person who is illiterate might perceive that if somebody else is telling them what it says. So, some of the basic questions that what you might call an atheist would ask Christians are things like, why do the good people suffer? Why don't amputees get their limbs back? Why do children die from cancer? Is the God incompetent, or are you going to put that off on Satan? Why are miracles ignored unless they're in the Christian community? Why is it that a miracle or something amazing that happens to a Muslim or a Jew doesn't count? Why does evil flourish while good people die? And here's a big question for me: is the Bible literal, or is it a metaphor? You can't pick one or the other. And we could say that there are stories in there that are literal and others that are metaphoric, but I'd like to have some Christian who considers themselves an expert tell us which ones are metaphors and which ones aren't. I mean, are slaves really supposed to obey their masters? Are we really supposed to kill people who work on the Sabbath, which could be Saturday or Sunday? So, I know this sounds kind of harsh, but these are the questions that we ask. Like I said, science has helped bring us better lives, and there are a lot of churches who bash Christianity or bash science as being the enemy of religion, and I just don't see it, because science actually was never meant to compete with religion. Science was an arm of religion, a new branch to understand things, and in fact, you could consider science a religion in its own right. And guess what? There's dogma in science too, and corruption, and lies, and bias. But overall, the scientific method still applies. If I drop a hammer on my foot 3 times and it hurts every time, it's probably going to hurt the next time. And those are the things that we have to be able to come to terms with. We can't even admit that basic physics are real in some cases, but we're willing to believe in invisible ideas because they're so, they're so desirable for people to have answers. It's one of the main psychological components that I've found. So, one thing I've noticed is that praying for Jesus does not make him appear. And I remember talking years ago with this guy, Truth Speller. He used to come to my channel. He was a hardcore Christian, and we talked a lot about religion. Several comments, for like a year we talked back and forth. And in the end, I was the enemy. I was the bad guy, and I was going to hell, and I was going to burn. And every time I cornered him with a question he didn't like, he'd get upset about it, and somehow I'd be the enemy. And he said, all you have to do is ask Jesus into your heart. And so one day I did. And when I told him about this later, he said, well, you have to mean it. And I say, see, this is the trap. You say you have to have faith in order to feel God. But in order to get faith, you have to have evidence of that God. And so to me, that means that it's a delusion, because delusions are very convincing. You know, a lot of folks may think that within Christian communities, you know, the people are happier, or the divorce rates are lower, let's say. Divorce rates are exactly the same in religious communities as they are, I mean, in this country, as they are elsewhere. And with atheists, agnostics, whatever you might call them. So I would say my only advice would be to believe what you choose, and if it conflicts with what others believe, don't make them the enemy because of it. You realize that if you really accept all beliefs, then you have to accept all beliefs. And like I said, the meek will inherit nothing. If you're just a meek person, then people will tread on you. So you have to be strong, you have to be bold. There is a lot of suppression within history of sexual urges, sexual desires, chastity belts, that kind of shit. I mean, the church has always been scared of people being happy. That's something I don't understand. You know, you don't want to consume anything. There's people flagellation where you beat yourself, you know, self-harm. What kind of a promotion is this, you know, for something happy, for a loving God that wants to kill so many people in the Bible? And I'm sorry that I attacked the Bible in this, but it's the truth. It's one of the longest standing books, and so people say, well, it must be true. And I just don't see it. I don't understand how people can really believe that the Bible is the key to life, or the book to life. And it's a mystery to me, if you will. But not really much any longer, or it has been a mystery to me. Because rather than trying to understand whether the Bible's right, or whether there's a real religion, or Buddhism, or anything is correct, I've realized that they're all just segments trying to explain different components of the same idea. If you believe any one of them, you're missing the whole big picture. And it's a psychology of people wanting some understanding. If I were to compare it to anything, it would be the conspiracy community, the conspiracy theory community. It's almost religious. They believe what they believe. They stand behind these YouTubers they see as like gods or authors or whatnot. They're always quoting these individual people. If somebody says anything against it, they say that you're just part of the problem. It's just like saying you're influenced by Satan, by saying that you're a government shill or something else. And you have a community that agrees with you and others that don't get shunned and pushed out. Just like Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses shun their family members who don't believe the religion anymore. And to me, that's something I don't understand. Because like I said, love is really the key to happiness in many regards. Maybe not for everyone, but for me it is. And so if I was forced to shun a family member because they didn't believe the same thing as I did, you know, forced by my church, or else I would be excommunicated. I mean, that just shows that they're more obsessed with control than anything else. And so, sorry to offend the Mormon church about their magic underwear, but what else could you call it? I mean, you know. So this will be the last attack I make on religion for a while. I just wanted to get that out, and hopefully I didn't come across as too offensive to anyone. Because I think that if you're a rational human being, even if you're religious, you can listen to this video and pretty much agree with everything I said. That it really is subjective. That it really is about us finding some sort of a connection and community, and that that's okay as long as we don't start dismissing everyone else for what they believe. So, God bless you all.
Why did God always have to send a messenger? Why the hell doesn't he show up himself? I mean, really now. God sent a messenger, God sent an angel. And they came from somewhere to somewhere. This implies the traversing of physical space. This implies physical laws. Why did God have to go from some place to another? Because he's only slightly superior.